When you do a 1 to 4 unit appraisal, it's based on square footage, it's based on number of bedrooms, it's based on number of bathrooms, and you kind of adjust up and down based on those factors.
We are back for part 2 of our series with myself. I'm Melvin Landry and my other half. Yep. So, as part of our podcast, we want to build off on the earlier part that we were speaking to regarding area of real estate, refinancing, and appraisal discussions regarding multifamily and opportunity zone that we were looking to refinance as a part of our overall business plan, which was renovating 8 units. And got some interesting results as the part of the kind of decision, if you will, in terms of dealing with our local bank. So there, you want to kind of shed some light on it to kickstart things off?
Yeah, for sure. I think I suggested that the ARV was going to come out at around 700. My husband thought it would come out closer to 800, and we were both wrong. The appraisal came in at 565,000. And it was about an 80-page report, give or take. So we started to look into it and said, okay, where did we go wrong? Because it's pretty simple to determine a value on a commercial property. So primarily, appraisers use the income-based approach, which is pretty simple. You take your rents, let's just say they were all $1,250. You multiply it times number of units, and you take a percentage of your expenses. You come up with your net operating income, right? Then you divide by your cap rate. So our rents, I'm just going to spell it out for you. So we calculated an NOI of $60,000 a year divided by a 9% cap rate. So that would be a value of about $666,000. So $100,000 more. And I use an expense ratio of 50%, which typically is super high. So we try to stick around the 40% range. So in our calculations, we typically use 40% expense ratio, but this appraiser was like, no, needs to be 50%. So he looked at our rents of $1,250 and said, I've never seen this before. And we were like, what the heck do you mean you've never seen this before? Here are the leases and the type of tenants that we had in these 8 units. It was a mix of folks that had Section 8 vouchers. We had a veteran in there that was getting money from his past duties. And then we had another person that was paying market rent. So there was a mix of people in there. It wasn't just strictly Section 8 vouchers.
Yeah.
So $1,250 is what is in black and white on our county website as to what you would pay for an apartment of the size that we have. So there was no question in our mind that this is how much the building was worth. So then the appraiser called my husband.
And I could shed some light on that. He basically couldn't get his head around the fact that we were getting excess of $1,200 for our units, even though he deemed classification of our building as above average. He thought a comparable value rent for that particular property should have ranged from $650 to $750, which was almost a 50% decrease versus what we were getting today. Additionally, I learned as part of the overall conversation that this particular appraiser had appraised the building 4 years earlier. Indirect factor, but again, it's a factor that actually carries weight overall in the grand scheme of things. Additionally, he meant, the square footage was kind of called into play as well. So this particular building that we're speaking to is these are studios, right? They're classified as 1-bedrooms, but again, they're studios. And smaller than the respective norm for the comps that were kind of being compared against.
And I have a problem with that. We talked about that, right, honey?
Yep.
We talked about, does it matter what the square footage is? When you do a 1 to 4 unit appraisal, it's based on square footage, it's based on number of bedrooms, it's based on number of bathrooms, and you kind of adjust up and down based on those factors. But when you're doing the income-based approach, I don't care if it's 200 square feet or if it's 1,400 square feet. If you're getting $1,250 a month in rent, that's how it should be valued. So folks, what Melvin is saying and what the appraiser told him was, well, I have to go with the market rents that I see, not the evidence that we provided them with the leases. So they calculated an NOI of 33,000. So almost half.
Yeah.
Half, folks, divided by 9 cap. And even at that rate, he put more weight on the cost comparison approach, which in my opinion on a commercial property should be weighed very lightly compared to the income-based approach. So folks, in a nutshell, we're still going to move forward with this particular refinance, even though we're going to get a lot less out of it. When I say out of it, with the cash out, which is why we do what we do. But what we did do is we went back to our bank and we said, hey, we know that you typically lend 75% of the ARV. Can you up that a little bit to 80%? So folks know that you can do this. The only answer you can get is no. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that we'll get the extra 5%. And while we didn't get the shebang of, $200,000 plus cash out refi, it's going to be $100,000 plus. And the good thing is we've learned some things. An appraisal is a value of opinion. So sometimes it's hard to understand. And at the end of the day, this property does cash flow like crazy at $1,250 a month per unit for 8 units. So we're going to take it. I think we learned some lessons about it, and hopefully we can be a little bit better the next time we go to do a cash out refi and try to get back into the plus or minus 10%, which is where I like to be when we're going into a purchase, to know what our plan is to get out of it.
Yeah.
So any final words, honey?
Yeah, look, I think there's some key takeaways as a part of that. So you think about future appraisals, something that I learned kind of coming into it now. I mean, look, we're in a down market. So even though we're in a down market, regardless of kind of where you're at in the country, appraisals tend to kind of fluctuate with the overall view of the market. So while things are, relatively soft, I would say kind of going in initially, it was overly aggressive in terms of where I thought the appraisal was going to land. Time to be ultra conservative in terms of kind of when predicting values and things of that nature. And that's something that we are going to take as a key learning and kind of move on, kind of going forward. It's always better to underthink and underpromise and over-deliver where the numbers come at versus the other way around, which in this case, while it's still favorable, right? We're not breaking even or we're not bringing money in terms of a cash in refi, but, still, it's to the interpretation of the appraiser at the end of the day. And some things, I guess we could agree to disagree on, but at the end of the day, right, while the bank hires the appraisal, technically we're hiring, we're part of that hiring process as well once it's chosen, and things are kind of put into place. So understanding the market fluctuations, I think, are key. When you're thinking about, the overall cash flow, like you mentioned, the cash out is not as high as we thought. That's okay, but it cash flows. It's more than covered from a DSCR standpoint, and that's always a good thing. And for us, right, let's ride the wave with the market, right? Date the rate. So if things dip again, we'll attempt to potentially refinance again and improve our position and kind of monitor accordingly. So it's a good one. The good news is, right, we have several in the hopper that we have to kind of get clean in terms of the overall debt structure. And now we're kind of we're aware in terms of how to think about things from an overall appraisal standpoint, right? The ones we have coming up are nowhere near as small as this one. They're larger in scope, larger in scale, and the rents are even higher. So let's kind of see where things come and just kind of take that into consideration. But when in doubt, be ultra conservative. So.
Yeah, and last but not least, typically you can't get an appraiser to change their value. So anyways, folks, we'll leave you with that. Wanted to share this learning experience with you so that you can know it's not always smooth sailing. You may not know all the answers. So until next time, peace.
Jacqueline and Melvin, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to listen to this episode of Get Diversified. Please make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on future episodes. Finally, stop by our website and follow us on social media. Ciao for now. Make it a great day, and we'll see you next time. And remember, get diversified.